Your soulmate is preparing to return to your life, but there's a problem. My beloved child, stop for one quiet moment, because the next few minutes may reveal why every delay, every unanswered question, and every unexpected turn has been leading toward a single moment that has not arrived by accident. There is movement where you believed there was only silence. There is preparation where you assumed nothing was happening. Your soulmate is preparing to return to your life. But there is a problem. It is not a problem meant to stop your story. It is a problem meant to transform it. And if you leave before hearing every piece of this message, you may never recognize the meaning behind what is already beginning to unfold around you. Imagine standing before a door that has remained closed for what feels like forever. From the outside, everything appears unchanged. Yet behind that door, furniture is being moved, lights are being turned on, and a place is being prepared for someone important. Life often works the same way. The biggest changes rarely announce themselves with noise. They begin quietly, beyond the reach of ordinary attention. What if the absence you've been trying to understand was never emptiness at all? What if it was preparation disguised as waiting? Here is where the mystery deepens. Your soulmate has reached a point where returning no longer feels impossible. Something inside them has shifted. Thoughts they once ignored have become impossible to silence. Memories they believed had faded now return without warning. Ordinary moments suddenly remind them of unfinished conversations, unanswered feelings, and a connection they can no longer explain away. Yet despite all of this, they hesitate. Why? Because the path back is not as simple as taking one step forward. Between intention and action stands an invisible obstacle. Not another person. Not distance. Not destiny refusing to cooperate. The obstacle is uncertainty. They wonder if too much time has passed. They question whether the version of you they remember still exists. They fear arriving too late, only to discover that the opportunity they once overlooked has disappeared forever. Stay with this thought for another moment. Sometimes the hardest journey is not crossing oceans or climbing mountains. Sometimes it is finding the courage to return after believing you have already lost your chance. That is the challenge unfolding now. Your soulmate is not fighting against fate, they are learning to overcome the voice inside that keeps whispering, "What if it's already too late?" And then something unexpected happens. A simple conversation, an ordinary place, a familiar song, a face in a crowd. Something completely unplanned begins breaking through that wall of doubt. Suddenly they realize that some connections refuse to fade, no matter how many seasons pass. Instead of disappearing, they quietly wait for the right moment to reveal their true strength. Now ask yourself one question. Have you noticed that your own perspective has been changing too? The things that once felt urgent no longer carry the same weight. Certain disappointments have slowly transformed into lessons. Even without realizing it, you've been becoming someone stronger, calmer, and more prepared for the kind of relationship that could never have survived in your past version. Growth has been happening on both sides of this unseen story. But here comes the part few people expect. The problem isn't only your soulmate's hesitation. It is timing. Not because destiny enjoys making people wait, but because two people can only truly reconnect when both have become capable of recognizing the value of what stands before them. Meeting too early would have repeated old patterns. Meeting now creates the possibility of writing a completely different chapter. Think about that. How many times have you wished everything happened sooner? Yet if it had, would either of you have understood what this connection was trying to teach? Sometimes the greatest blessing is delayed until your heart becomes capable of protecting it instead of accidentally pushing it away. Something remarkable is approaching, but it will not arrive wearing a label that says, "This is your moment." It may appear as an ordinary day, an unexpected message, a surprising coincidence, or a conversation you almost decided to ignore. That is why awareness matters more than urgency. Before moving ahead, hold on to this single sentence. Preparation often looks exactly like waiting until the moment it suddenly becomes arrival. And believe it or not, the most surprising part of this story has not even been revealed yet. The obstacle standing between you and your soulmate is far more complicated, and far more meaningful, than it appears from the surface. So stay a little longer. Because the next chapter uncovers the hidden truth behind the delay, and once you see it, every unanswered question from the past may begin fitting together in a way you never imagined possible. Before you decide what this story means, listen to what comes next, because this is where the hidden problem finally begins to reveal its true shape. It isn't a locked door. It isn't bad timing alone. It is something far quieter, and far more powerful. Your soulmate is standing at the edge of a decision that could change both of your futures, yet they cannot take the next step until one final illusion disappears. For a long time, they believed the story was already finished. They convinced themselves that silence meant closure. They told their own heart that moving forward was the only logical choice. But every attempt to bury the connection only caused it to return in unexpected ways. A random memory would interrupt an ordinary afternoon. A familiar place would suddenly feel different. Even moments of success carried an unexplainable feeling that someone important was missing from the picture. And that is the problem. When someone spends too much time pretending they no longer care, they eventually begin believing their own disguise. Your soulmate has been trapped inside that disguise for longer than they ever expected. The outside world sees confidence. Inside, however, another conversation has been taking place. One filled with unanswered questions they never had the courage to speak aloud. What if I misunderstood everything? What if the distance between us was never permanent? What if the person I keep thinking about has been waiting for a different version of me? Notice how these questions do not bring fear. They bring awakening. Because every meaningful reunion begins long before two people meet again. It begins the moment one heart becomes honest enough to admit that it has been carrying unfinished emotions all along. Now pause for just a second. While your soulmate has been struggling with uncertainty, something equally important has been happening in your own journey. You have been collecting wisdom from moments that once felt disappointing. Situations that seemed like endings were quietly teaching patience, clarity, and self-worth. Without realizing it, you've become someone who no longer chases every answer. Instead, you've learned to recognize what truly deserves your energy. That transformation matters more than you think. Because if this reunion had happened months ago, or even years ago, you might have repeated the same conversations, the same misunderstandings, and the same emotional patterns. Today, the possibility is different. Not because destiny suddenly changed its mind, but because both lives have been reshaped by experiences neither of you could have skipped. Still, one final challenge remains. Your soulmate keeps looking backward, searching for permission from yesterday to create tomorrow. They worry that the mistakes of the past will be remembered louder than the growth that followed. Yet life rarely asks us to become perfect before opening another door. It simply asks whether we are willing to walk through it with greater understanding than before. Imagine standing before a bridge that once looked broken. From a distance, it still appears impossible to cross. But step closer, and you discover that the missing pieces have quietly been rebuilt one by one. The bridge was never gone. You simply hadn't looked at it from the right place. Perhaps that image is more real than it first appears. Because somewhere, even now, decisions are forming that neither of you can fully see yet. Small choices. Honest reflections. Unexpected conversations. Tiny moments that seem ordinary on their own, yet together they are creating a future that once seemed impossible. If these words have resonated with something deep inside you, let this journey continue with others who may need the same reminder. Share your thoughts below about what part spoke to you the most, and if you'd like to stay connected for the next chapter of this story, you're always welcome to subscribe and be part of this growing community. But don't leave just yet. The greatest surprise has remained hidden until now. There is one truth your soulmate has not discovered about themselves, a realization so unexpected that the moment it arrives, everything they believed about this connection will begin to change. It won't happen through dramatic events or impossible coincidences. It will happen through one simple realization that has the power to erase years of hesitation in a single moment. Wait until the next chapter. Because that realization is closer than anyone realizes, and once it appears, the return that seemed uncertain may suddenly become impossible to ignore. Just when it seems the path has finally become clear, another layer of the story quietly reveals itself. Don't rush past this moment, because what you're about to hear is not the ending. It is the turning point that explains why everything has unfolded exactly as it has. Your soulmate is still preparing to return, but the final problem has nothing to do with distance anymore. It has everything to do with recognition. Think about how often people search for extraordinary signs while overlooking the quiet ones that matter most. The heart rarely announces its biggest decisions with noise. Instead, it changes in silence until one ordinary day becomes unforgettable. That is exactly where your soulmate stands now. They are beginning to recognize something they spent far too long trying to explain away. They are realizing that some people enter your life to teach a lesson, while one rare connection quietly reshapes the direction of your future. For the first time in a long while, they are no longer asking, "Should I move on?" Instead, a different question keeps returning. What if the person I've been searching for has been the same person all along? That single thought changes everything. Because once a question like that takes root, it refuses to disappear. It follows them into quiet evenings. It appears during ordinary routines. It returns in moments when the world grows still. Every attempt to ignore it only makes it clearer. Yet here comes the final obstacle. They don't know whether you'll recognize the person they have become. People often believe the greatest fear is rejection. In reality, an even deeper fear exists, the fear of returning with a changed heart, only to discover that someone still sees the old version of you. Your soulmate has changed in ways few people understand. They have learned through mistakes, reflection, and moments that force them to grow beyond their comfort. But now they wonder whether that growth will ever be seen. And perhaps you've been asking a similar question without even realizing it. Will anyone truly understand how much I've changed? Life has an interesting way of answering questions like these. It doesn't always answer with words. Sometimes it answers through timing. Imagine two travelers walking toward the same destination from opposite directions. For years, they cannot see one another because every hill, every turn, and every season blocks the view. Then one morning, without either of them forcing the moment, they arrive at the same place at the same time. Neither traveler caused the sunrise. They simply kept moving until the light made recognition possible. That image carries more truth than it first appears. Because your soulmate's return is not about recreating yesterday. It is about recognizing who both of you have become today. And that changes the entire meaning of this journey. The problem that once looked like a wall slowly reveals itself as preparation. The waiting that once felt endless begins to make sense. The unanswered moments become pieces of a much larger picture. Every delay has been quietly shaping two lives that are now far more capable of creating something lasting than they ever were before. But one final piece still needs to fall into place. Soon, your soulmate will stop searching for certainty before taking action. Instead, they will understand that certainty often arrives only after the first courageous step is taken. That realization is powerful enough to transform hesitation into movement. So if life places an unexpected conversation, an unfamiliar opportunity, or a surprising moment of clarity in front of you, don't dismiss it simply because it arrives quietly. The most meaningful chapters rarely begin with loud announcements. They begin with a feeling that whispers, "Pay attention. This moment is different." Before this chapter closes, remember one thing above all else. The return you've been waiting for was never only about another person finding the way back. It was also about you becoming the version of yourself capable of welcoming a new beginning without carrying the weight of the old one. The next chapter goes even deeper. Because there is one hidden choice your soulmate is about to make, one decision that nobody around them expects. And when that choice is finally made, you'll understand why every twist in this journey was leading toward a future that neither of you could have imagined until now. One final truth remains, and this is the part most people never expect. Stay until the very last sentence, because what seemed like a problem at the beginning of this journey is about to reveal its real purpose. Sometimes the greatest obstacle isn't placed in front of you to stop your path. It is placed there to make sure you arrive as the person you were always meant to become. Right now, your soulmate is standing before a choice that feels larger than anything they have faced before. They have reached the point where continuing to hide their feelings feels heavier than expressing them. For so long, silence felt safe. It asked nothing. It risked nothing. But silence also gave nothing. Now they understand something that changes everything. A future cannot be built from words that are never spoken. That realization is becoming impossible to ignore. Perhaps they won't have every answer. Perhaps they still won't know exactly how everything will unfold. But they are beginning to see that waiting for perfect certainty could mean losing a beautiful opportunity forever. Growth has taught them that courage is rarely the absence of doubt, it is choosing to move forward even while questions still exist. Can you feel how different this energy is from the beginning? At first, the story was about waiting. Now, it is about movement. At first, the problem looked like a barrier. Now, it looks like preparation. Every moment that felt confusing has quietly been arranging pieces that neither of you could fully see. Looking back, you'll eventually recognize that the delays protected both hearts from meeting before they were truly ready. What once appeared to be distance was, in many ways, a season of becoming. Imagine reading the final page of a novel before reaching the chapters that explain everything. The ending would make little sense. Yet once you've experienced every twist, every pause, and every unexpected turn, the final chapter feels inevitable. Life often unfolds in exactly the same way. Your soulmate is no longer being guided by who they used to be. They are being guided by who they are becoming. And the same is true for you. That is why this connection feels different now. It is no longer built on imagination alone. It is built on lessons, patience, maturity, and the quiet confidence that meaningful things are worth waiting for. There may come a day that looks completely ordinary. Nothing extraordinary about the morning. Nothing unusual about the afternoon. Then, almost without warning, one conversation, one message, or one unexpected moment changes the direction of everything that follows. When that day arrives, don't measure it by how dramatic it appears. Measure it by how deeply it resonates within you. Because the biggest turning points in life often arrive without announcing themselves. If this story has brought hope, perspective, or simply encouraged you to pause and reflect, I'd love to hear what part connected with you the most. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and if you'd like to continue exploring stories like this together, subscribing is a wonderful way to stay connected for future journeys. As this chapter closes, carry one final thought with you. Not every delay is a denial. Not every silence is an ending. And not every distance means two paths are growing apart. Sometimes life asks two people to grow separately so that, when they finally meet again, they no longer have to search for who they are. They simply recognize what has always been waiting beneath the surface. So walk forward with calm confidence. Continue becoming the person you are proud to be. Let your future be shaped by wisdom rather than worry, by hope rather than haste. Because if this story has shown us anything, it is this. Your soulmate's return was never just about coming back. It was about returning with greater understanding, greater courage, and a heart finally ready to recognize the value of a connection that time could never truly erase. And perhaps, that journey has already begun. And now, before this journey truly comes to an end, there is one last piece of the story that has been quietly waiting in the shadows. It is not another mystery designed to keep you guessing. It is the answer that has been hidden inside every chapter from the very beginning. If you've stayed this far, then perhaps this message has arrived at exactly the right moment for you. Look back for a second. The title said your soulmate is preparing to return to your life, but there's a problem. At first, that problem seemed like hesitation. Then it appeared to be timing. Later, it looked like uncertainty and fear. But now the full picture can finally be seen. The greatest problem was never outside either of you. It was the belief that the story had already ended. How many beautiful opportunities disappear simply because people convince themselves they have already missed them? How many dreams are quietly abandoned because someone mistakes silence for the final chapter? Sometimes the hardest barrier to overcome is not distance, circumstances, or time. It is the story we keep repeating inside our own minds. Your soulmate has slowly begun releasing that old story. And perhaps, without realizing it, you have too. That is why this moment feels different. You are no longer waiting for someone to complete you. You are becoming complete enough to welcome someone without losing yourself. That shift changes everything. Imagine a river after a long winter. For months, it appears still. Frozen. Unmoving. Anyone passing by might believe nothing is happening beneath the surface. Yet when the season changes, the water begins flowing again, not because it suddenly learned how to move, but because